I know that I said that I was going to type, but I had intended to do videos for each of these as they came. So thank you, Alexis, for being the first person to ask me. And today we're going to talk about Knives Out, the Thanksgiving release, still in theaters right now. So if you have the opportunity, please head down and see it. I think it might actually be the best thing on screen right now. Rian Johnson, writer and director of this feature. You may know Rian Johnson from Looper and the episodes of Breaking Bad, Fly and Ozymandias, and I'm sure those are the only things that you'll think about when you hear Rian Johnson's name, because let's just leave him alone on that, please. There has been enough discussion about another movie that he's made to last several lifetimes, and I just don't want to go into it. So let's talk about Knives Out. Knives Out is a whodunit mystery which takes Rian Johnson's biggest strengths, which is his deconstructive nature of story writing. He analyzes how an audience will perceive the thing that he writes, and he loads it with enough world building, character building, and story building that it's deeply engaging for the entire runtime, which is just under 2 hours. I really enjoyed the movie thoroughly. It has a very vibrant colour palette. Unfortunately, it is a little bit diluted in the final mix. That's just typical of pretty much every movie these days. Nobody really wants to show off a full colour palette unless they're going for a stylistic thing. But every character is wearing ridiculously bright outfits, and everyone is acting their butts off, especially Michael Shannon. Shannon does his usual screaming crazy thing, but for the most part he plays a character who tries to act sympathetic. There's one scene that just cements the fact that he's not exactly a great person. But no one in the family is a great person. I don't wish to go too deep into spoilers because, well, it's a whodunit mystery, but it is a whodunit mystery that understands that you want to solve the mystery, and therefore tries to tell you a few things like, hey, maybe you should focus on this, or maybe you should focus on this, and it keeps on peppering in little bits of information to help you. For instance, there are some secret passages in the house of our grandfather, character played by Christopher Plummer, the man who will save us from Darkwing Duck appearing in other movies. I actually don't remember the movie that came out last year that had him replaced. I didn't see it, but Chris Plummer is a good actor and does very well with this character. Very charismatic, and makes you care about him and think, what does he feel about all these things? Because one of the big mysteries of the movie, right out the gate, is the murder takes place on his birthday party, where he speaks to each member of his family privately about his estate. He is the writer of several murder mysteries, and he has several $1 million of estate that he's built up over the years. And his family all feel entitled to parts of that. And that right there is the core of the movie. Entitlement. Old money versus the diligence of the working class. The main character is a live-in nurse. Well, I suppose she's not a live-in nurse. She actually lives with her mother across town, but she spends a decent amount of time at the estate, so much that she is a member of the family, although a reoccurring joke is that everybody says that they wanted to invite her to the funeral, but they were outvoted. Everybody says this. There is a fantastic scene midway through the movie where they are discussing politics. The politics of the family is pretty varied. You have one splinter of the family leaning more to the left, while another splinter is more to the right. And Michael Shannon acts very ignorant towards his son's beliefs, but his son is so much so on the alt-right that Daniel Craig refers to him as a Nazi child who masturbates in the bathroom. Anyway, you don't want to hear me give a plot synopsis of the movie, especially because it is a movie that requires you to engage with the plot as it is. What I will say is that the satire of old money versus the diligence of the working class is fantastically structured. There's a lot of subtlety to the performances too. For instance, during a scene where they're having the political discussion, they misrepresent the main character's country of origin several times throughout the movie, and she is a nurse, and yet during the conversation where they're using her as the example of somebody who came into the country correctly, a piece of trash is offered to her as if she was the housemaid, who is another character. They have several of these moments where you really get the disdain for the entitlement of these people who haven't actually done anything meaningful with their own lives that wasn't supported by Chris Plummer's character's finances. And him taking it away causes them a desperation, a belief that they deserve this money because of the fact that they are genetically owed it. And I kind of enjoyed the deep satire on that level, because it really does go into a lot of the things that are going on in the world right now, and you wouldn't expect that from a murder mystery, but the movie is like an ogre. It has layers. Another thing I do want to give massive praise towards is not only Daniel Craig's Kentucky detective, and he speaks like Foghorn Leghorn, and so much so that the characters in the movie are referencing it. And he's just going on and on with this southern drawl. And it's absolutely ridiculous because you get James Bond speaking in this. And the way that it's designed is that, from our perspective, a lot of the big murder mystery detectives, you got your Hercule Poirot, Belgian. You got Sherlock Holmes. He's obviously English. You got these fetishized detectives who are emblematic of their home countries. And so the detective in this one is just designed to be as stereotypically American as possible. Now, written by an American, but, with the idea of it being fetishized from the outside, given the fact that, both of those detectives were also written by people from their own nations, but ramped up to the nth degree, and I deeply appreciate that. The set design is fantastic. The interview room, the first 10-15 minutes of the movie take place in a room that is essentially a conservatory that is made out of all of these different pieces of memorabilia towards Chris Plummer's books. So there's like this circle of knives potentially set up for, either items from his murder mysteries or just something cool because he's an author of murder mysteries, and why wouldn't a murder mystery author have a giant collection of knives set out in an artistic display? But it's very striking. The entire house is a character unto itself, and I love that. Whenever you go into a movie and you see a location or a vehicle that becomes part of the family, it's as much a character on the screen as, the actors on screen. It's just phenomenal, and I love that house. I want to live in that house, and you start to really get a feel for the landscape of it. You get to see which rooms are connected to which rooms. Each of the characters in the family have their own little sub-story arc, reasons why they could have been potentially the killer, but also deeper into who they are as a person, because don't forget that the satire is also a big part of the plot. You might be getting this information fed to you plot-wise because it's motive for murder, but it's also a character examination into the type of person that this, second generation, born wealthy family would be, and the kind of anxieties that would exist in their life because of it. Especially because Chris Plummer's character is just not having any of their shit anymore, which, could potentially be why he died. As I said, Michael Shannon does a phenomenal job. Daniel Craig just swinging for the fences. Chris Evans, he's pretty decent. Unfortunately, he's not really playing against his usual type. He's just doing his straight delivery. I kind of felt like he was Captain America the majority of the time, and I know that he's capable of doing performances that aren't just straight Chris Evans. I mean, you look at Scott Pilgrim versus the World, where he's playing Lucas Lee, and I can watch that movie 1,000 times and I never see Captain America. But in this movie, I kind of felt it's just, him sitting across the table in a restaurant, and I'm just thinking of Winter Soldier, where he's hanging out with Natasha. So yeah, Knives Out, fantastic movie. Has the best closing shot of any movie that I've seen this year. I can pretty much say that the year is over, and the closing shot is perfection. Absolute perfection. If I were bold enough, I'd probably have that on the screen instead. But those are my thoughts on Knives Out. Thank you very much for listening, and I want to do some more of these, so give me some more movies to talk about.